Okay. Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here with everybody. And so my current role is I am the chief of staff. Chief of staff and strategy is the title for the Tennessee Department of General Services. And so General services for the state of Tennessee is, um, I guess for most of us, the easiest way to think of it is it's kind of like a really enhanced G4, right? So we do all of the contracting and procurement for the state. We handle all the fleet management and all the vehicle assets, including things like lawnmowers and stuff like that at cemeteries and for Department of Transportation. And then we have the real estate management division, and we do all of the document and printing solutions for the state, which is part of that. One just fun fact is specifically in Nashville itself, all of Tennessee state government has a single zip code. And so it all comes to one building, and we have about 20,000 pieces of mail a day that come in and get distributed between the hours of like 5 and 9 a.m. And sent out to all of the offices downtown. So it's just one of those little fun facts where you'll see stuff, and you're like, wait, how do you guys have the same zip code? So yeah, but yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. And it's one of those things I think for state government that I never thought about until I had an opportunity to talk with someone else doing it. Because when someone said government, I automatically was thinking, I don't want to get into politics. It's like nothing to do with it, two completely separate pathways. And when you think of government roles, literally, if you threw, a dart at a dartboard with any role you can think of, it exists somewhere within state government. And for most of us, one of the really big things is as you take off your uniform and that sense of identity and purpose thing, you're going back into a role where I'm serving the citizens of Tennessee. And so it's very familiar to us in terms of how we feel about being a part of something bigger than ourselves.
There you go. Okay. That's awesome, man. That's a lot of really cool things. How many people put it one in the chat if you live in Tennessee? Anyone live in Tennessee or trying to do their skill bridge or are from Tennessee or anything like that? We got anyone? No? All right. Well, that's all right, man. We've definitely, I'm sure people will move there if they
Yeah,
find out. I used to live in Millington. Okay. Still own a house in Clarksville. Cool
there you
stuff.
go.
Hey, Chris, let's talk about your military time, man. What'd you do in the military? How long? Let's go through the whole spiel.
Okay, yeah. So started out as a 17-year-old, getting my parents to sign a permission slip for me to join, and I started as a Black Hawk crew chief, and I did that for about 9 years. Deployed a few times doing that, and then I ended up actually doing what I think a lot of us have done. And I got out of the Army thinking, hey man, the grass is greener on the other side. Went back to school. I got a degree in journalism. Started working as a professional, as a newspaper editor, a bureau chief, and then I started looking at pay scales and realized that, man, I'd make more as an E4 if I went back in the Army right now. Once you factor in BAH and healthcare and all those things. So after about a 6-year break in service, my family and I decided to come back on active duty. And so in 2007, we came back, and I was in transportation at that point with the goal, since I now have my degree, to go to OCS. And that took a few years to get to that point. But I ended up going to OCS, being a transportation officer, which then becomes, if any of you are in that field, it then becomes a multifunctional logistics officer once you become a captain. And as I was getting close to the end of my career, I started looking at kind of what other opportunities might be there for me and where I could think of leveraging my military service for the next chapter of my life. And that led to me applying to become a public affairs officer, which in the Army is a functional area rather than an actual, career field. And so that's how I closed out my career. And my last gig was as a public affairs officer for the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment here at Fort Campbell, which is technically in Kentucky. And since I dropped one trivia piece, I dropped another one to you. So 72% of the massive land of Fort Campbell is in the state of Tennessee. But the post office on Fort Campbell is 100 yards inside the Kentucky line. So it's Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
That's wild. So crazy. I have the same issue here in Raleigh where I'm at, man. Like I'm in one county, right? And if I drive 30 seconds south, I'm in a different. But if I turn left and drive 30 seconds again, I'm back in the same county. I'm just like, what is going on here? So I definitely feel you on that. And I just recently moved to the Raleigh area, so I'm very new to all of it. And it's funny to talk to the locals and, the ones that have been here a while. And then they're like, what? What are you talking about? I was like, I'm not used to that. I'm used to some kind of continuity, but so tell us a little bit about, that process that you did. Let's talk about the first time. You talked a little bit about it, but what was something that you wish you would have known leaving the military the first time that you learned um, back then?
So honestly, I think the biggest lesson for me both times was network. We hear that and sometimes we think of it like a dirty word. And of course now LinkedIn didn't exist my first time. So now LinkedIn even complicates it more with people throwing that out there. Because, it just it's a thing, right? I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But I think the big thing was on the network side was remembering that you're not doing this by yourself, right? Once you step out, that last day on active duty, you step out. There's going to be an identity crisis. There's no way around it, right? The tribe that you were a part of yesterday, hanging out at the motor pool, smoking and joking on the flight line, whatever the case might be. The day after, like for me, it was April 1st, which was a whole nother story. But like on April 2nd, I'm out doing my own thing. My friends and tribe is still back at work doing their thing. And so I really felt like I was out there on my own doing it. Right. And the reality is I wasn't, but you fool yourself into thinking that. So the thing I wish I'd leaned more on the first time that I did a much better job the second time was remembering that there are a ton of folks just like all of you on this call who are out there, ready to help and ready to burn some social capital in their network to help get you phone calls with people, connections with people, opportunities for roles, whatever it might be. And we spend a lot of time thinking that we're on our own now trying to do this. And it's funny because it's so opposite of the mindset that we've had however many years we've been active duty of remembering that we're always on a team and we do very little by ourselves. But for some reason, that next day after your active duty service ends, we get it in our head that I'm all alone now and I got to figure this out. And I think that's the biggest thing. The first time I wish I'd remembered that I still had teammates willing to help me if I had just opened my mouth and said, "Hey, can you help?"
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's important. One of the things that we're building here at Seven Eagle is the idea of having that network ready to go, whenever. And we're starting it early, Chris. Like we're getting people in to do their skill bridge early, so we're we're blurring that line of being, active duty with the network and not active duty, but still with the network. That's where the line is getting blurred there because of what we're trying to accomplish. And we're as far as like the job that you do now, you said that there's always something in the government that someone can do. So what exactly do you mean by that? How would our students be able to capitalize on something like that if they were looking to work in the government but didn't want to do anything that had to do with politics?
So the biggest thing, I say the easiest thing, is probably to go to the state's job board, right? I mean, you can go to different departments within any state government and start looking and seeing what they do, and start trying to see if some of that, might interest you. But the job board, obviously, things are available. But because they're on the job board, you can see the PDs, right? You can see the descriptions of the role and really start figuring out what it looks like. Because that leads to, just like you're talking about with blurring that line as you're getting out, is it gets you the opportunity while you still have basically the safety net of having a paycheck, being on active duty. And yes, I know that's a whole different conversation right now with having a paycheck, but it gives you that chance to have that safety built in while you're having conversations with people to say, hey, I don't know, you're a project manager, or you lead this division, you do real estate asset management for the state. That's something that I think might interest me. I think my skill set might align with. Would you be willing to talk to me about what that looks like, right? And then just like you guys are doing here, it gives you the chance to talk to someone who's doing that role, because we can read a PD all day long and go, "Oh, that sounds really cool," but then you talk to someone and like that's not actually what they do, right? And so it may or may not interest you once you talk to them and really find out their day to day. But I think that's the biggest thing in terms of figuring out roles that are in there, is just getting in there and looking at PDs, or like in my instance hitting me up and saying, "Hey, you know what? I'd really love to get into some role. I'm not sure what it is, but with Department of Health, is there someone that you could connect me with there that I could talk to?" Right. And then letting someone like, in your network open that door for you to have the conversation. Because once you talk to, say you talk to the chief of staff in the Department of Health and you say, "Hey, here's my background, here's what I do today," they may have a light bulb go on that says, "Actually, you know what I think might interest you is this. So let me connect you with my teammate who does that thing and let you talk to them and find out if there's an alignment there." But it goes back to that network piece of being able just to have those conversations and really start figuring out, the things that you think might interest you if they actually do once you talk to somebody who's currently doing it or who has done it.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? I mean, building out the network is what we're trying to accomplish as much as possible. I've got some people here in the chat, Chris, that are looking for employment opportunities in what Jerlin's talking about. No, who was it? I'm sorry. Did you read this? Did you read any of the chat?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. See, I don't see.
Oh, Fred Sarton said driving but looking to move to Maryville or is it Severville area in
Yeah,
Tennessee?
severe. Yeah,
Severe. Yeah.
Sevierville. Yeah.
So, I mean, there are people that are interested in moving to Tennessee and working. I mean, what is there job opportunities there for these candidates and students?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we'll talk outside of state government, but just Tennessee as a whole, we are, I think, one of the top five economic development, situations in the country right now. And so we got a huge influx of people coming in here. A lot of businesses are moving here. And again, it's everything under the radar you can think of. So there's a lot of auto manufacturing here, a lot of agricultural opportunities, and we're starting to see technology companies coming here too. And a good example of this is over near Memphis. They just built it's the data center, and they're building a power plant. It's weird, but for Grok, right? So Elon Musk's AI version, however you want to phrase it. But yeah, across the state there are a ton of opportunities. And in terms of veterans, we have, so out in West Tennessee, so the Memphis area, Jackson area, there's a very strong veteran population out there. That's actually the strongest concentration of veterans in the state. And then when you go over to East Tennessee, so the Maryville, the Sevierville, the Tri-Cities, Knoxville, all that, they have a tremendous veterans coalition and opportunity to tie people in there, to have those conversations and see, who's open, who's hiring, what roles are out there. So yeah, I will say in Tennessee as a whole, the veteran ecosystem is very strong. So it's helpful for folks as we transition out. And it's strong in a way that there's a lot less infighting than I've seen in other places. And a lot of people that are like, "Hey, man, like, you want to get into healthcare? I don't have a role at my company, but I got a buddy who works at a different healthcare company. Let me connect you with him." Right. And some other places I've been, they're so like headstrong against each other, like, "Oh, I don't have a role, sorry," and they just drop you there, and that's not really helpful, right? So, it's the way I look at it is I'm always working to try and get to yes, right? So even if I don't have a role or if that role's not right for me, do you mind if I share it with somebody else? Because if I can get you in the room to have the conversation, now it's on you. You're in the room, you got to sell yourself, right? Take all the things you're learning here and jump in there and make something out of it.
Is there any incentivization for moving to Tennessee as a veteran? Like, are they saying, "Hey, we're looking for veterans to move to Tennessee to work here"? Is there anything like that?
So not specifically like a relocation kind of piece. However, with our labor and workforce, there are programs here to lead towards like trade certifications and stuff like that once you do move here. And we got a lot of nonprofits that are, trying to help in that realm as well. And there's some strong draw here. Property values are pretty solid. Now, if you're in the Nashville area, as you can imagine, just like any other, major metro area, property values are out of control. But the rest of the state, right, they're incredible. You can come and there's good property value. There are, depending on once you get your VA stuff done, there are property tax breaks. And then one of the biggest selling points for Tennessee for most of us is the fact that there's zero income tax. And so your new role is not going to have income tax, but also if you're, retiring, you don't have to worry about paying income tax on that as well, right? And so that's a really big draw for most of us, because no matter what spot you're at when you retire, man, if I can keep all of that in my pocket, I'm all about it, right?
I think all
And
of
so
us are a
that's a
little
real
money
big draw.
hungry. We're
Yeah.
all looking to keep that money that we earned after 15, 20, most of us in here are 15, 20-year bets, so we want to keep our money as much as possible. That's awesome. Throw a one in the chat if you are cyber or something like that. He said something about Grok moving there. One in the chat if you're cyber. Cyber, look at this. Look at this. Who would be interested?
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw a 23 in the chat if you are interested in working for Grok. 67, Chris.
Six,
There you
seven.
go. 23. Look
Somebody
at
had to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Look at 23s, 23s, 23. You see how interested? I mean, that's insane. I don't even think we knew that they were building that there. That's really cool knowledge, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, let me add one piece of that. So, in Nashville for years, obviously it's Music City, right? So it has the music industry, but it's been the hub of healthcare in the country. Over the last 3 to 5 years, it's become a hub for tech. So all you folks that are into cyber and stuff like that, the Nashville Tech Council, we're in tight with the CEO there, but there's a huge tech push within the Middle Tennessee area as well. So yeah, we can definitely make some connections there and get y'all tied in, even if it's not Grok out there in West Tennessee, but it's just you're thinking about the Middle Tennessee area. There's such a huge push here right now, and some of it's tied to the healthcare piece, but yeah, the tech industry has really started to pick up here. And honestly, I think some of the tax benefits personally, but also for companies, has led to some of those tech companies relocating to Tennessee, and we're seeing some in Texas as well. To be fair, but they're coming here because of some of those tax implications as well.
Don't forget about me in Raleigh, man. Research Triangle Park is huge over here. We've got all kinds of stuff, but we're talking about Tennessee right now, so let's keep it there. But let's see here. Rachel, you said you missed something about Grok. You said Grok was moving to the east side of Tennessee, Chris?
The west side, over closer to
Oh, west side.
Memphis.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. Got my directions wrong. Okay,
No,
yeah, so
no.
there
Well,
you go, Rachel. They're moving Grok some of the stuff over to the Memphis area. So I mean, dude, this is so cool, man. I mean, Tennessee seems to have quite the draw for people. It's in the middle of the country pretty much for the most part, you know. It seems to me like there's thousands of roles out there. Um, if you were to give these guys one big piece of advice, as seeing that you transitioned out of the military twice, what do you think you would leave these guys with? Talking about their transition and how it could benefit them.
um, so I think the biggest piece for me, and I think the network piece always, is what comes back for me for the biggest piece of advice, right? And so I also like to remember, or to coach that it's about people at the end of the day, right? I actually, it's funny. Some of you may remember there's a quote from Maya Angelou that is like, people aren't going to remember what you did or what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And so, what's going to happen is for each of us as you're going through this process, you're going to be asking for help, right? Don't be afraid to ask for help. We get in our head that there's this military strength thing and being on our own and not needing anybody and all this, but this is one of those things where this is your chance to be selfish, right? For so long in your lives you've been focused on the we, right? You've been focused on everybody else, on taking care of the team, on taking care of those who are working with you and for you, and always looking out for the other person. Right now, this is your time to shift a little bit inward and be selfish for a while, right? You don't have to be selfish for the rest of your lives, but for the next, few months, years, be selfish. Worry about what your family needs, worry about what you need, and be willing to ask for help and let folks like me jump in to try and help with that process. Because you're going to see there's a marked change when you move from the military environment to a civilian environment. And some of you may have experienced that before you joined the military and you know exactly what I'm talking about. But we have this thing that I like to call bias to action, right? And so we're just conditioned where we get a little bit of a guidance and we just go, right? And so what you're going to find once you get outside is they very much are looking for the 100% solution before they're willing to start the car, right? Most of us are used to, hey, you give me 50 or 60 and I'll figure out the rest as I go. We'll refine it and we'll come back and we'll back brief and do all the things that we're used to doing. And so some of that is going to be different, when you get out there. So, lean on the network, be selfish, and as part of that selfishness, involve your family early and often in these discussions you're having, these decisions you're making. Because again, if you did 20 years, like I did 26, right? And so along the way, we get the illusion of choice, when like our human resources says, hey, here's some options. Okay, cool. I don't really have a choice. You're just making me think I do. But my family's going to go where Uncle Sam says I'm going, right? Well, now that's not the case. So if you have an opportunity that comes up in, Des Moines, Iowa, that sounds cool, you better talk to your family and find out. Your family may not want to go to Des Moines, right? And so you're gonna have to make the choice. And that's one of them. There'll be other jobs somewhere else, but make sure your family gets a vote in that, right? So I think I kind of jumbled a bunch of stuff in there together, but like the whole point there is just focus on yourself, right? Be the me person right now,
I'll go to
because
Iowa.
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, there you go. No, that's good. Yeah, because what's going to happen is if you don't focus on yourself right now, you're going to go through this process and, you're going to be miserable because you didn't take the time to look out for you and make sure you were, making the best choice for you and your family. And transition never ends. You've probably heard that before, right? But take the steps along the way to try and make it the best you can as you're doing it by focus internal and taking care of yourself. Because the big green machine is going to keep trucking without you. So we tell ourselves we're irreplaceable, and we keep trying to do stuff right up to the day, we're signing out on terminal leave, and that thing's going to keep on going, right? But once you're out, you're on your own anyway. So it's time now to start thinking about that, of what's the best choice for you and your family moving forward, and leaning in on that.
How did you change the narrative inside yourself after transitioning out to build that kind of confidence that you have to talk about yourself? Because I feel like a lot of us here don't understand that leaving something that's bigger than yourself, you still gained a lot of knowledge and you know what I'm saying? So like, how do you change that narrative inside yourself to be confident?
So for me, I've tried to find a balance between the two, right? And so when I'm in an interview, for example, for a potential role, um, what we're used to doing is saying, let me tell you what my team did. Well, if I'm hiring you to join my team, I want to know what you did, not what your team did. So, but there's a balance in there where you can actually present that and say, hey, here's this thing, my team went and we did this incredible logistics operation and solved these problems. And also, here's what I did as a part of that, right? I led it, I planned it, I did, whatever the case may be there. And so that I think that makes it easier for us to not feel like we are somehow being less true to ourselves, because most of us are so focused on being selfless as a part of our service. It's ingrained in us. And it gives us the ability to shift a little bit and give you the me without feeling like I'm completely giving up the identity that I've spent 20 years, you know, owning. Right. And so that's the biggest thing, is find that way to mix it in there. And since I mentioned the interview piece on that note, you're going to also need to find a balance in how you talk about your service, right? And by that, I mean, you don't want to just talk about military service and start dropping acronyms and all this stuff, because you'll lose whoever the interviewer is and they won't connect with you and the opportunity is going to be gone. However, you don't want to not talk about your service at all, because your resume is built around that service. So you want to be able to drop little hints in there, right? And for most people that have no service, if you're able to drop in something cool about like, oh, a little vignette about how in this logistics operation, what this happened was because you rode out there on a Chinook for an hour and then jumped out of the back of it. Like those things, you're going to see interviews be like, well, that's really cool. Right. And so they want a little bit of flavor in that as you do it. Right. So yeah, that one's kind of cool too. I hope that
Well,
answered it, Derek.
yeah, no, you're doing awesome, man. So how many people have you hired like within the last few years directly yourself?
So probably about 10. Yeah, about 10 total.
And what are you looking for in a candidate? What is something that you can say, hey, this is something that I'm looking for in a candidate, and talk to the veteran, these transitioning service members and veterans to give them a little nugget, like what are you looking for?
So the biggest thing is, are you going to fit on my team? Right. Because, just like most of us, we've had that teammate that just upsets everything. And you're like, dude, you're the chaos agent. You're mayhem from the Allstate commercial, right? Like, so trying to avoid hiring that person. And so, when you come in, I mean, look the part first of all, right? So, I'll give you an example. we were interviewing for the governor's veteran fellowship for a new class of fellows, and that program brings in transition service members for a year to work in state government as a skill bridge leading into a paid role. And it's got the governor's name on it, right? And we had a candidate show up in a shirt and some cargo pants and his sleeves rolled up, and you're like, everyone else was in a suit and tie or a pantsuit for late or whatever, right? Like a professional attire. So literally when he walked in the door, we were like it's not that it was over because he could have still knocked our socks off, but he didn't start well, right? Because he didn't understand the environment there and for presenting himself in the appropriate way, right? So that right there lets you know, like, okay, you may not be culturally astute to what we're doing here and how you're going to fit in. All right.
In
But
three
one thing
words,
that's
right?
really good.
Know your audience, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and one thing that, like, for most of us, it's very helpful is that we're already used to talking about, and you'll hear like soft skills, hard skills, whatever, but we're used to talking about things like, dedication and loyalty and things like that. When you're coming onto one of our teams, I can teach you the technical aspects of the job, right? I can't teach you things like, hey, you're going to show up on time on Tuesday when it's your schedule, right? And those are things that are drilled into us, but it's easy for us to talk about why that's important to us and how that impacted our lives. So being able to present those things helps as well, because I'll teach you how to run the machine, right? But I can't teach you all the things like being loyal to your team and being dedicated enough to show up. And it's kind of funny. We actually were in a meeting with the governor about the veteran fellowship, and he made a comment like, when I started this job, I really thought one of our biggest things would be like, hey, the workforce struggles because we have, drug problem or a drinking problem or something like that. He's like, I didn't realize that it would be because people can't show up at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday. Like that's just too much to ask, right? And so, those things that again for us are like, okay, that's the easy button, right? I know where to be, when to be there, what uniform I should be in, right? So for us, it's just something that it's natural to us. And so being able to present those sorts of things as you're interviewing and talking through what you bring to the team, right, and the value that you're adding. And so you need to know a little bit about the intricacies of the particular role. Right. So it can't all be soft skills. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, this is the value that I add to your team. And that can be difficult to profess sometimes, I guess, and it can also be something where we're back to that balance piece, right, where you're trying to showcase those skills that you've picked up during your military career, but also how they translate over. And so it can be challenging. And so as a part of that, I would definitely say take advantage of every mock interview opportunity you get. Because those are going to be critical for you to talk through those things and have someone else willing to call you out and go, hey, bro, you said SOP 5 times. Oh, okay. Like, or you kept dropping these acronyms. You kept slipping back into your military term. And when you're doing that, you may lose that audience, like you mentioned, Derek. And in this instance, that audience is someone who could potentially be offering you a job.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, you hit it right on the head. Um, So I only have like one or two more questions myself. I'd love to open the floor to anyone else that has a question. Jason has a question right now. So if you guys want to throw your hands up, if you got a couple questions, that'd be great. If not, I have a few. Right now, I'm going to hand it over to Jason to ask his question.
Hey Chris, how you doing?
Good.
Can you hear me? Hey, yeah. So you said you did you do 10 interviews or you hired 10 different people?
We hired 10 people, and out
Okay.
of that, I think we had about 18 candidates total.
So of those, um, what was your biggest? I mean, were you a factor in making the decision, or was it a team choice?
So it was a team choice. So we had an interview panel of two, and so
Okay.
different companies do it different ways. I mean, sometimes you have a single person, but the way we like to do it is have multiple people, and then we have a score sheet. And so at the end of it, we can sit down and go, okay, hey, like here's the 10 things that we were trying to consider for this role. And you scored Chris an 8 here, but a 2 here, and then we balance it out. And then unless something really weird, like the example of the guy may have scored well, but he clearly didn't understand what professional attire was. Like unless it's something like that,
You definitely
then
hired that
generally
guy,
those,
right?
yeah, well, yeah, oh yeah, he's on board. No, but like but then without some weird outside factor like that, the scores generally will shake themselves out. And what's interesting for us is we when we ended up sharing our rank sheets, for these roles, like we had the same people in the same positions. So it's interesting how, oftentimes that'll just kind of align because as the hiring folks, you're having conversations beforehand about what you're looking for, and so you generally are on pretty much the same page of what you're hoping to get from candidates.
Yeah. So I like how you brought up the score sheet. Did anyone like rise above the score sheet? So for example, like had, accreditations, low accreditations and low, I don't know, experience, but overall, like between you and the other hiring person, where they like rose above the score sheet. Did you hire any of those people just for their interview skills?
Yeah, so we had one. So state of Tennessee, the way that the system works is for executive service roles, and so that's kind of like the top of the food chain. You have to have a degree. Doesn't matter what degree is, you have to have a degree. And so we did have one who had not completed their bachelor's yet. They were working on it, but interviewed so well that we said, hey, you know what? We're gonna take a chance on this guy anyway, and just stress to him that before he takes a full-time role, we're going to have to try and figure out how we get him to finish his degree. And he wasn't that far off, but yeah, he did rise above like the requirements that we had
Yeah.
to actually, us be willing to take a chance on him anyway because he just had presented himself so well.
So what got that person's foot in the door? I guess is the best question. So I'm guessing you have like an applicant tracking system or something. This person got a resume to you. So how did that person get their foot in the door?
Yeah, and ours was kind of weird because we do have the ATS, but for these particular roles, we're able to pull without, fully going through that system. But what got him in the door was literally the long answer form on the
Yeah.
on our application because we have some questions on there. We've got some of the demographic stuff, and then we've got about eight like long form answers, and the way he answered those and the just the detail and the time he took, it was clear that one, he put in a lot of effort in answering those, and two, that AI didn't write it for him, right? Because that's something we're seeing a lot now too, where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, clearly you write this, and there's things that jump off the page with some AI stuff, and with the number of folks in here that seem like they're in a tech kind of field, I'm sure you've all seen it. But it was clear that this came directly from him, and so just when you take that much time and care in the beginning of the process as you're trying to achieve an opportunity, it
Yeah.
bodes well for you to get the opportunity because, like, man, if you took this much time in the application process, I think I can likely, make the assumption that you're probably going to put that much care into the role once you're on the team as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the questions.
Yeah, awesome question, man. All right, Robert, what you got?
This is more of a strategic level question, but where do you see Tennessee's like cyber slash strategy for like the next 2 or 3 years? What direction do you see that heading?
No, it's a good question, especially right now with everything else going on. So the state of Tennessee is actually one of, I want to say like three that has really leaned in on AI and cyber at the state level. And so there's this weird thing with the federal government and how they're going to allow states to do certain things and things like that. But we hired a new CIO about a year ago, and as part of her role, she stood up an AI steering committee that's driving, AI usage and innovation within state government. But that's also helping us drive some of it with our private industry as well, and how they can tie better in with what we're doing. And then we have an innovation lab that's a part of that she stood up. It's gotten funded already by the state legislature so that we can bring folks in there to start having those things and go, hey, here's emerging threats, here's current threats, and how are we going after those? What are we doing as a state? Because if the state government role, we're really trying to lean on that, it helps us work better with private industry to make sure that we're protecting, just industry across the state. And then as you trickle down there, right, the individual citizen within the state of Tennessee, as we look at that. So I would say over the next, if you look at like the next 3 to 5 years, I think there's going to be a real strong push in Tennessee to be a national leader in that area. And that goes back to like I was talking earlier, the Nashville Tech Council has really leaned in hard on that. And there's been a bunch of just, I'd say, tech innovators that are either moving to Tennessee or doing business in Tennessee from wherever they are because they want to be a part of that push.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What about Dave Ramsey? Is he hiring still?
I don't know. That's a good question. We should
I'm
call him and
kidding.
ask him.
Right, right. Yeah. Don't do that. You might get in a phone call about money all day. We got anyone else with any questions? Just do me a favor and throw one in the chat if you guys are interested in talking to Chris at any point about the state of
But
Tennessee. There you go. Look at that. All right. So we got some people, man, that are interested in talking to you. I do have like just one real main question left for you, man. And it's really involved around the veterans themselves and like what are you personally focused on improving for fellow veterans and military families in the next year? Like what is something that's, close to the vest? What are you trying to change? What are you trying to do?
so for me personally, this is something that goes back to some stuff. So I was fortunate enough to be in the Bush Presidential Center Veteran Leadership Program a couple of years ago, and so something that came out of that, I have a focus on belonging for military families and for veterans. It's something that for most of us, we face it during our career because every time we move, you're the outsider. You're never sure how to integrate with the new community. We generally stay around others like us. We either live on post or we live in communities that hang out with other military families, and we do the same thing once we get out. And what happens as a part of that is it makes the transition significantly harder because we never figure out how to integrate into our community. And it's funny because we figure out how to integrate into a new military community and a new unit and all those things, but we never figure out how to do it on the civilian side. And it really creates this us versus them kind of thing, which we internalize, I think, sometimes. And then when it comes time to transition, it makes it real hard to figure out how to jump out there and seek those opportunities. And little things like not using all my military acronyms when I'm in an interview, right? Not dropping the F bomb in an interview, right? Things like that, it's the cultural piece because we're around other veterans, right? And you'll see it, like I still do it. When I'm out and I'm at work, I rarely curse. But if I go out and grab a beer tonight with three of my buddies, like we're F-bombing and dropping them all over the place, right? And it's just like you get back in it and it just happens. But that belonging piece is huge, right? And so if you never looked at it, like there's some components to belonging that are really important, and one of them is people, right? And so for us, when we're in the military, we have this tribe that you're like just on this call, right? You have it built in, it's integral. You don't have to really search for it. And when we transition, trying to find that people piece, that's where the network comes back into being so important, right? Yeah, I'm thinking about moving to this place. Can you connect me with someone there? Right. Because it could be a job. It could be, hey, what neighborhoods are good? It could be, hey, my kid's a high achieving, a child going into the eighth grade. Like, what's some good schools I should be looking at? Things like it could be, I need a church. You have recommendations for that, whatever it might be. But having that people connection is huge. There's the place piece, which comes back to, ties right into that of where I'm going, whether my family wants to be there. But then you've got like the power and the purpose piece, right? And so the purpose, when I put my uniform on, the purpose is right here over my heart. I don't even have to try and figure it out, right? But once I take it off, it becomes much more difficult to figure that out. All right. And so that belonging piece is so huge because what happens is when you get out, you do like I was talking about earlier, where you think you're on your own. You got to figure it out on your own. You don't want to ask for help. You're afraid of what people are going to think. All these things. That purpose piece is such a big part of feeling like you belong somewhere. And so, as a part of that, one thing that I do a lot, and I recommend to all of you, if you haven't already done it, to think through, but start looking at volunteer opportunities that you might have somewhere. All right. So for me, I volunteer with the Travis Manion Foundation, the Night Stalker Association. There's a couple other ones. Wear Blue, Run to Remember. Some of you may have heard of some of these. Like we volunteer with them because what'll happen is those things can become the bridge into this next chapter of your lives, right? Because you're still going to be around people that understand it and can get you that I need to step back for a second and be inside, my tribe, while also having folks who can connect you with, what your new tribe might be, right? And so that those things become critically important because what you'll see through those volunteer opportunities is different opportunities for purpose, right? Some of us are fortunate enough to find a job that helps align with some purpose. You might find an incredible job that you're like, man, this is going to pay my family really well. It's going to set me up the way I want to be, doing work I want to do, but I don't know about the purpose piece, right? Okay, cool. You can find the purpose piece, by volunteering with a VSO or some local nonprofit, or teaching Sunday school, or coaching youth soccer at the YMCA, whatever it might be. But for me, that's where it all comes back to that belonging piece. How do we continue to foster an opportunity where veterans and our families, when we're transitioning out, that we're figuring out where we fit in, and we have a community that's helping us do that, right? So that's where my focus has been for a while now. There's a lot of like positive psychology in that and things like that that tie into it, but it's really being able to figure out how we build an ecosystem that keeps any one of us 6 months after you transition from sitting on your couch in a dark room all by yourself, thinking you're all alone, that nobody cares about you, that you don't matter, and you're making other decisions, right? And so that's where that sense of belonging all comes back to, is how do we make sure that we all feel valued, supported, seen? We know that, like, hey man, if something's going crappy, that I got somebody I can hit up, and they're going to help me. And one thing I always like to bring up, and something just to think through as you're transitioning, you make yourself a little roster if you need to, but you might have 2,000 Facebook friends, but do you have 5 people that if your car broke down tonight on your way home, you could call one of them, they drop whatever they were doing and come help you change a tire, right? Because that roster of 5 people as you're transitioning is going to become critical, because there's going to be moments where you're going to go, man, this sucks, right? Like my our
Oh,
tire pan hasn't kicked yet, disability hasn't kicked in yet. I haven't found the innards. In that moment when things were just kind of crappy, I called Chris, I called Derek, I called whoever, and they swung by the house and met me for lunch. They got a cup of coffee, whatever it was, to remind me that they all wraps up in that belonging and feel like I am where I'm supposed to be.
that's awesome, man. That's really, really cool. I mean, Chris, it's crazy what you're doing there in Tennessee, man. I mean, it's really cool, everything that you're building up over there. Yeah, just so you know, Chris, a little bit of the last of your bit was cut out. I don't know if we lost some internet or if we got a little turbulence in the line, but I think everything's good. I do appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story with us, man. It's crazy to think that it's possible to get out there and succeed. Being on this side of it, a lot of us are over here on the side that we're still in the military. So we appreciate you coming on, Chris. Thank you so much for your time. Is there any last questions or anything like that? Nope. Let's get some cheers in the chat for everyone for Chris, from everyone for Chris. And thank you so much for your time, Chris.
Oh man, thanks. Hey, before I go, I did see somebody dropping their In and Out from Huntsville. So In and Out will be over in the Lebanon area outside of Nashville in about 6 months. So yeah, get your road trip ready.
Oh, I'm going to. I'm from California, so I definitely will be heading that way to get some. And oh, I don't think that's very far from me. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. So was that four or
Now
five
Lebanon's
hours?
on the east side of town, so yeah, it's probably 4 hours for you. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna go get me an In-N-Out burger for sure. Hey, thanks again, Chris. Thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to talking to you soon. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a great day. Hey, and hit me up if you need anything. I'm always open book. So hit me on LinkedIn, however you